of all, my obvious question, you probably get asked that 1,000 times, why Jack the Bear? What's the story there?
There's no reason for it other than it was a nickname that was given to me by two drunks in the New York subway in 1980, in the early 80s. And it was just a name that stuck like dog shit to a shoe. So, but in short, amongst some, I think some Canadians who work in what we call timber, they call lumber. Jack the Bear is a creature they blame on when things don't go great. And so if something fucks up badly, they blame Jack the Bear. And so someone called me Jack the Bear just out of in a drunken argument. And my friend heard that and thought it was really funny. And he said, you know, you do a job where you're trying to fix people's mistakes in their music and make it right. And yet, you know, you're being called Jack the Bear, who we blame on when things don't go great. So there was this a delicious irony in all of that, and so it stuck to me, and it has been for shit, man. It's coming up to nearly 40 years now. So so I'm living with it.
Crazy, that's good. Do you think that had an impact on your success and longevity in the industry, like having a nickname or having kind of like a story to it? Or do you think that has nothing to do with it?
No, not really. I mean, a brand or a name, or whether it's clever or quirky, may, for some people, maybe something that sticks out and could work to your advantage. But at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. So it doesn't matter how clever you are with your marketing strategy, or how clever your name is, or your logo is, or any of the other stuff around you. If you're not producing the goods and you're not giving value to people, in fact, it can probably then work against you, because then people remember you for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, I think a couple of days ago, I've seen a video on YouTube, and it was about the debate looks versus sound, right? So for example, when we look at headphones, and there's this one party says like, oh look, obviously I want to get a pair of headphones of cans that sound amazing, and I don't worry about how they look like, right? Because they just get the job done. And then you have let's say the Beats headphones that might look cool, but are, in my opinion, not really useful in the studio or for professional audio. So and I think that's a big debate, right? Because a lot of people, they judge things by its cover. And there are a lot of people who do the other thing. Where do you think, what we should focus on as emerging artists? Should we spend a lot of time on the marketing and on the visual aspect of our journey, or should we focus more on the quality of our products and services?
Well, the obvious answer to me is to go for the quality. But I think when people are younger, it's like anything that's fashionable. When kids are growing up, people want to look cool. They want to wear certain sneakers, or certain jeans, or certain T-shirts, or they follow certain bands. So I think when you're younger, it's easier to get caught up in the trap of wanting to look like everyone else and be part of the cool kids, and having a certain aesthetic that you want to be, associated with and whatnot, even if the quality is not there. But that takes a lot of strength of character. And I think when you're younger, you're very insecure within yourself. You don't quite know who you are. You're trying to work it out. And so everybody wants to be, part of the majority, because even if it's shit, or even if an opinion is wrong, it doesn't matter, because you're not the only one standing out alone, you see? And so no one's going to blame you in terms of whether your idea is wrong or your thing ultimately is no good at all. But I encourage people when they're young to follow their own path, and it's not an easy thing to do, particularly when we've got a lot of peer group pressure growing up. Social media now more than ever is really reinforcing that. And so again, it's that primary fear of I'm not enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not whatever enough, and therefore they get sucked in. And the marketeers know this, they understand this, they know how it works, and so they prey on that vulnerability. So in answer again to your question, if you can, don't get hooked into what happens to be cool or looks good. I mean, it's great to have things that look good, but more importantly, it's about what works for you. What makes it work for you, and it makes it easy for you to work on and produce the results that you want and that your clients want. That's the most important thing. You know, for me, I mean, I got a really beautiful room, and people come in and they're impressed by it when they walk in and whatnot. But there were times, you know, when I started my business on a coffee table in the flat in 1991. It was anything but cool. But it worked and it was functional and it did the job. And so, you know, people had to learn that, well, if they wanted to come to me purely because of how I looked or how cool my studio was or what sort of gear was in it, then they weren't the people that I wanted to deal with, because they were working for the wrong reason and using the wrong criteria to work with.
So 1991, you started on a kitchen bench on a little table, and now a couple of short years later, you are where you're right now. You're working with the greatest artists in the world together, right? If I, you know, Nick Cave, Silverchair, etc., just to name a few. Can you like guide us a little bit through that journey? What happened? Like, what would you think were the biggest milestones or mindsets that you developed going from a table where most people start, you know, in the bedroom or in the, you know, somewhere in the rehearsal room or something? Like what changed in your mindset to go from that state into, you know, in a high-end studio where, you know, and everyone knows you in the industry, you will.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one particular thing or particular things. It over the course of time, my motivation and my inspiration was always different. From the beginning, my main inspiration as a teenager, because I knew very early I wanted to work in music and work behind the scenes, because I knew I didn't have the talent or the looks to be in front of a mic or on stage, but I was always fascinated with the record making process. But, you know, for me, my initial main reason why I wanted to get into it was obviously because I love music, but I also worked out very early that I wanted to spend my life working on something that I really enjoyed, because, you know, I worked out early that I was going to spend a big chunk of my waking hours at work. Most people do. So common sense dictated to me that, well, if you're going to spend a lot of time on a job or working at something, you may as well find something you want to do and you love. And so I went on discovery to find out what that was within, you know, behind the scenes of the music industry. And it took a very long time of just trial and error and not really having a permanent job. It was, you know, traveling, knocking on studio doors, sitting down, trying to work it out, being very frustrated at that, because as I got older, I felt like, oh shit, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? I've got no money. I've got no house. I was under a lot of pressure to get married from my father. And in fact, to even get a formal education degree, which I never aspired towards. I knew that even though I was an intelligent student, I had no desire to want to go down academia. So back then it was just about job satisfaction. And as time gone on, I've learned a lot of lessons along the way in different areas and had impact and has impacted me in different kind of ways. So, you know, today, the way I approach things and the way I look at my work and life, it's very, very different now at 57 than what it was at 17, 18, you know. So initially it was all about love of music and job satisfaction and wanting my ego to be lifted, because I thought, you know, to work in the music industry, it was cool and people would think you were great. And, you know, there's this element of, you know, because I grew up like a lot of young kids, very insecure, very doubtful of myself, a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental health issues, lost. And I stayed there for a long period of time, many years. But my work was where I found my salvation. That's where I found comfort. That's where I found my identity. But it was still very ego-driven. And, you know, I think one of the biggest shifts for me was learning through my mentor. I've had a lot of mentors in my life. I still have mentors that I look towards from time to time. But if there's one guy who I would attribute to being probably the most impactful mentor that I've had and I still have to this day is a gentleman by the name of Peter Sage. And Peter introduced me to the concept of working from what he calls ethnocentric place, not egocentric. So when we're doing something, we're working egocentric. It's all about us. It's about our enjoyment. And yes, we need to enjoy our work, and we need to be, taking care of our needs and making sure that we're happy with what we do and what we come up with. And there's that is okay. It's when everything rests on that to the exclusion of everyone else. And then, when someone works from an ethnocentric place, then we take some of the focus away from us and we start thinking about service. We're starting to think about who we're looking after. We're starting to think about contribution, because the laws of nature are growth and contribution. When something stops to contribute in nature, it gets taken out of the food chain. The tree stops producing fruit, it withers, it dies, and then it makes a different contribution. It'll become fertilizer for the next tree to come along. So that there's no justice, there's no fairness, it's just the way it goes. So in the human world, it's a similar kind of thing. In order for us to grow and become better, we need to contribute. And that doesn't mean that you give everything you have and you become a doormat and that you just say, here, take everything. But when I talk about contribute, I'm talking about how can you use your skills? How can you use your connections? Can you use your talent, not just to further your own cause, but in order to help others along the way? Mm-hmm. So that is when you're networking, rather than thinking about who do I want to meet for my own means, my own end, who can I meet so that I can perhaps see how I can contribute towards them, how I can bring my talent to the table, how I can build a relationship. So I think that when we can start thinking about things from an ethnocentric place and we start to become more cooperative and not competitive against other people, then it opens us up to a lot more possibility. We have less friction. There's less hassle in your life. At least that's been my experience so far. I'm not saying it's perfect. You're always going to come across the odd individual who doesn't quite understand the script and play the game. But again, you learn lessons from those people as well. And you start becoming someone who wants to do something more than just enjoy music and make things money and do things for yourself. You find how with the resources that you have and the excess resources that you have, it's like a good gambler, Michel. Yeah. I don't believe a good gambler is an oxymoron. I don't believe in gambling. But let's just say someone that likes to go and play at the casino quite often, the responsible gambler. Okay, if you're going to gamble anyway, the better gambler in that context is someone that will go to play with money they can afford to lose. Mm-hmm. Not with money that they don't have. And so that's when they get really upset and they get anxious and they start to make risky decisions because they need to win back what they lost. And so what happens is a lot of people want to contribute, but when they do it, they don't do it from an unconditional place. It's done from a place of, well, I'm going to do this podcast, for example. I will do this podcast for Michel because I perceive in my mind that Michel, I heard he's a friend of Rick Rubin's. I'll do this because I hope that he's going to talk to Rick Rubin. In the meantime, I've got a client waiting outside for a job. Mm-hmm. So I really can't afford the hour, but I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about how do I leverage this for my own benefit. Yeah. And then I find out later that you don't talk to Rick Rubin about me. That was never going to be part of the conversation. And then I get upset and I go, well, hang on a minute. I gave my time to your fucking podcast, man. Mm-hmm. What the fuck? And I've let down a client. But you see, that's on me. Mm-hmm. That's on me because I made this thought in my mind that I'm going to, first of all, it's egocentric and I'm doing something with time I never had in the first place. Yeah. You see? When the reality is I should have just said, listen, no, man, I'm sorry, I can't do it today. I've got to go take care of my client. Mm-hmm. I'll get back to you or we'll have to do this another day when I've got half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, free at my disposal that I can give to you without any condition and not giving zero fucks whether you know Rick Rubin or not. It shouldn't matter. It's something that you do because you want to, because I want to make a contribution to the podcast, and that's it.
Yeah.
So operating from that place. And that took me a very long time to get to. Very long time to get to. You know, if I'm being brutally honest with you. And so this is why I encourage kids that from the get-go, think very carefully about be a contributor. But just because at the moment you may not be able to contribute, that's okay. It doesn't make you any less a person. You know, you build your things up to a level where you have the excess. Yeah. When you know that it's like the gambler, the rent's paid, there's food on the table, there's no outstanding bills, there's still money in the bank, and just happens to have $50, where it doesn't matter whether he loses that $50 or not, because his life remains unchanged. All the important things are in order. He goes, he has a good time, he doesn't give a shit. He had a bit of fun, he had his little adrenaline rush, and then he goes home. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a similar kind of concept, but you know, contributing, giving your time, money, resources. Here, you can use my guitar, or you could, and doing it again with no expectation of anything. Don't factor that in to, people get unstuck. And then now logically, when you think about it, well, if I do a good turn for Michel, he'll do a good turn for me. Or you expect so. And logically I get that. And it's like, okay, I'll give you something, you give me a little something. I get that, but it doesn't always happen that way. People don't necessarily think the way you do. In fact, it's one of the biggest mistakes we make, is that we think people think like us, and they don't. And so when people do things that aren't in accordance to the way we think, we get frustrated, we get upset, we get angry. Yeah. How many times have you heard people say, well, if that was me, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have said that. And and there's a reason why, because they're fucking not you. And that's why they didn't say or do the thing that you would have said or done. Yeah. So when you give that up and just understand that you are an expression of life, everyone else is an individual expression of life, and you allow things to unfold, then you're going to live your life way calmer, way happier, more productive, and with more friends around you.
It is a very interesting concept, right? I think two things that you said like really resonate with me, because they're so counterintuitive of I think what most emerging artists trying to do. The first thing is that we have this belief system that, your curve to success is like that, right? While, we work with so many artists, and we know that from our own biography. It's more like, yes, here one day, then completely there, then somewhere. It's kind of like more like that, right? That's not really a curve.
Look, when you think about life, is a non-linear experience. Okay. There are no straight lines in nature. You look at a river, you look at a coastline. There's nothing that is an absolute straight line, point A to point B, that is not man-made. Okay. And we think very much in the left side of our brain, which is very linear thinking, very logic, very strategic, very has to make sense, add up. Yeah. And we apply too much of that line of thinking, when the reality is that's not how life is. Yeah. As you said, it is constantly going up and down and up, and you hopefully want it to have a trajectory in the positive, upwards, upward, but it's not always going to be going that way. We know that life is going to throw, curveballs at us. There's going to be bends in the river, and we can't change the bends. It's like the things that happen outside of us, and people make the mistake of the people that are grinders. I'm going to grind. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to. And that's good and has its place and has some validity. But when you do too much of that, it becomes very tiresome. And I know, because I did it for most of my life. So I understand how that is. And when I learn to relax and understand that things sometimes happen in ways that we don't understand and we never will understand. And that's okay. It's okay to live in the space of a question. It's okay not to know the answer. It's okay to be in the, well, I don't know where this is happening or what's going on. It's just to trust that life works in a way that is beyond everyone's understanding. It's out of our pay grade. Yeah. And that your job is to just get your rudder, and where you have control is how you negotiate the bend in the river. Right? So you're gonna use your rudder, and you're gonna make sure that you go through the bends, or you're gonna say, fuck this, I'm gonna jump off the boat and I'm gonna get a shovel, I'm gonna try and dig out the bend and make a straight line to make, it's not gonna work, right? Or well, it can, if you got the energy and the time, but it's very tiresome.
It is.
So understanding that's the way life works, and things happen that isn't fair at the time. Life isn't meant to be fair. Our logic says, well, life should be fair. We do this should happen, and sometimes it doesn't. It's not meant to happen. It's not necessarily meant to be fair.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that life is shit and that there is a conspiracy out there to ruin everyone's day. I believe that life, if there is a conspiracy, I believe that life is conspiring to work for you, but we just get in the way. A lack of awareness gets in the way, and we create stories around things that happen to us, and then we have these negative thoughts and emotions and meanings to things, and so we are our own best friend and our own worst enemy when it comes to it. Life doesn't have any emotion where it goes, oh, there, poor Michel, and it doesn't sit there necessarily and go, yay, Michel. It's neutral.
Life just is.
It's very
life
neutral.
just is, right? Life just is, absolutely. And we like our evaluation of the things that happen can change the directory of like how we live, right?
Precisely.
Like when you said, like things go up and down, it just reminded me of a time when I was living in Berlin in Germany, and we just finished a tour with one of my bands that I played in, and we came home that night, and the day before we played at 11,000 stadium, and it was amazing. But you know how it is with the payments, they take time. And so we unloaded our bus, and then we went all home, and then I got home and looked at my bank statement, and it was like empty. But the rent was due, and I was still so high from like being celebrated, and then I thought like, well, what am I doing? And then I saw myself half an hour later on a bridge in the eastern part of Berlin, and was just playing cover songs and originals, and like no one recognized me, right? And no one cared. And it was this kind of like, wow, this is like, and it happens all at the same time. And I think if you're not okay with that ambiguity and with that dualism of like, yes, you are successful in one thing, you're totally shit at another thing, I really believe that music is probably not the right thing to pursue professionally. Would you agree with that?
Look, if you're just driven purely by money, you see, money is just an illusory concept. Okay, I mean, people think money is just paper. It's polyester sheets, mostly dead people print on it, but it's an arbitrary value of exchange. But what is money? Money is nothing more than the byproduct of value that you bring to the world. Okay,
it's energy, right?
Now, value is a perceived thing. I mean, why is it that someone will pay $20 million for a painting that looks like it was done by an elephant, and a roller, and other people will look at it and go, well, I wouldn't even pay $3 for it. It's all a matter of perception. And the same thing with as artists, what we create, because art is so subjective, and even in the context of what I do in my job, people value different things about why they want to come and see me. You ask 10 people why they want to come and work here, I guarantee you'll have 10 different reasons.
Really? Are you sure about that? Because I think people come to you because they trust you, because you have a good product and service, and you're likable.
Well, that's probably some of the common denominators, but
yeah.
I've got a guy that comes here, believe it or not. He only brings music because he really wants to be mentored. And I tell him, you don't have to do that, buddy. But he feels that's what he needs to do to justify his existence here. And it's not because he wants to release a track, but he feels that's how he needs. But he comes here because he says he gets better value than he does from his shrink. He said, the shrink he's had over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And it pays way less than that. And that's what he comes for. I mean, that's the value in his eyes, you know. But look, and I appreciate what you said. That was very kind of you. And I think in this day and age, you need to be liked and trusted. And trust is the currency now in order to be successful. But in terms of what the value I bring, everyone going to see it differently. Some people will look at me and go, "There's no fucking way I'm going to spend that much money. I don't care." And some people will pay more, some people pay less. Again, it depends on what they perceive the value and the way you also explain the value that you bring, without having to sell.
Yeah.
And that's another big issue that a lot of people have, is that they think we need to market a lot, we need to sell a lot of advertising, and we need to sell. Let me tell you, I think we can all agree on this, or most of us can agree on this, is that everybody loves to buy, but nobody wants to be sold to. Nobody wants to work with someone where they feel this neediness that, come here, I'll undercut my price, I'll do this, I'll do that. Yeah. Your value is completely gone down the toilet.
Yeah.
You throw your value away. And people necessarily don't like it. Yes, there are people that are tire kickers and they're price shoppers and they're only worried about money. And frankly, they're not my people and they're not people that I want to be dealing with, But they're not, just because you undercut someone or you make it cheap, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has value or necessarily, it's going to help your cause in the long run.
Gotcha.
I also don't think that you should be elevating and overinflating either, because again, you're not going to be able to, unless you can, again, reflect the value. Why is it some people can charge so many $1,000s for a mix, other people can charge X amount of dollars a mix?
Yeah. And
generally speaking, we're not talking about, someone that costs 3 times as much isn't necessarily 3 times better. Maybe there's a good name behind it, like a designer label. People will pay more money for a designer label because they're paying for the label. Yes, it's quality. It's got all these things around it, but ultimately it comes down to this. It's how people feel. People like to feel significant.
Wow.
Everyone wants to feel significant. So when people do things, they do things because it makes them feel good. Oh, I got a vintage 74 Stratocaster and I paid $12,000 for it. Oh, they feel good about it. That's how they build their significance. I got a mix done by this engineer. I got a mix mastered by that engineer. And I paid $500 for it. When they could have got the same thing for half the price and as good, if not better. But how they feel, because we all want to feel significant. And I think that when you can do that with people and help them feel significant and you're sincere in making them feel that way, that's where you're going to bring value to people.
Wow.
I've always said that, particularly now, I got a lot of young mentees and they say, fuck, like, how do I compete with all these engineers? There's so much stuff online. There's so many options. There's so many great price points of people giving great value. And they're absolutely right. And I said, look, the number one factor I think that's going to be the biggest differentiator for anyone, irrespective of how experienced you are in the field, is what I call the love you give to the client. How much love can you give the client? And by that, I mean, how well will you serve the client? How invested are you going to be in what they're doing? How much of your skill and talent and contribution you're going to bring to the table? Again, within reason, within limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want to overextend yourself either. But I mean, you think about it, man. You got someone who's trying to book a studio. They've got 3 different studios. They're all very similar in the equipment. They're all very similar in the price. One guy's a total asshole. The second guy's a gentleman, and the third guy's a gentleman too, but he's going to show more interest in you because he's going to ask questions about you. He's going to find out more about you. He will do a little extra before you even do any work. He's going to go and do a few things for you to show you that he's definitely interested and he's keen and he's invested. Yeah. And even if he charges maybe 20% more than the others, they want to go where they feel validated, where they feel loved, where they feel appreciated, where they feel significant, because we all want to feel significant. Okay? So if everything else is relatively equal and fair, you better believe it, man.
That's the edge, right? That's the edge. That's really the point of difference, right? Because, I mean, you don't have to have fancy studio anymore to do fancy mixes. The playing field is level, more or less, right?
Well, the person with the more humble studio that is invested in the client and that can demonstrate that by asking questions about them and by trying to do things for them without bending over backwards and being a doormat.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the person, I can tell you now, that for the most part will get the nod. And that, you know, it's like what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast about the aesthetic versus the quality.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So,
yeah. Because as the saying goes, my friend, when the needle drops, the bullshit stops.
I like that one.
The end user doesn't give three fucks about what gear, how good it looked, what the studio looked like. If the music rocks their world and it touches them in a certain way, no one gives a shit about the other stuff. Maybe if you're a boffin and you have interest, perhaps, but that's a minority. You know, in the world where we're asking for people to spend money and download songs and buy merchandise and go to shows and sign up for live streams and all this sort of stuff, these people don't give a shit and fuck about that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's who you want to be catering to.
Mm. And I also think it's something that we lost this, I would say, like in the music world, this analog touch, right? This really communicating with someone, and especially for you, I can only assume, but I mean, you have a quite difficult future ahead of you, right? With mastering services online, with things going cheaper and cheaper. I think the point of distinction, next to obviously your technical expertise, is really creating good relationships with people and having this, you know, this distinction between a robot or an algorithm mastering and having that human touch. And even when you said you bring your clients in, or a lot of clients coming to you because they want to see what you do and learn from you, and probably also want to be inspired, right?
And look, I've always said from the get-go, and I've said this publicly many a time, and my position hasn't changed. I doubt it ever will, which is that AI, automated services, they have a right to exist in the ecosystem. In fact, I wish I came up with the idea myself from a business model. It's fucking genius.
Yeah.
You know, if I had come up with that idea and was able to bring it to fruition, I wouldn't be doing, I'd be doing this podcast on my yacht, you know, on the Adelphi coast in Italy, sucking on oysters and drinking Bollinger.
Would that make you happy though?
Well, maybe
for
for
a couple of
day.
weeks.
maybe a day or two, but
Maybe.
I've got you know, there was a time where I was very much about material stuff and wanted equipment and now it's interesting, you know, we have this thing called gear acquisition syndrome. You know, people are lusting after things and they want them. And then when you get them after a while, it's like, okay, well, because it's never enough. You see, this is why we have so many unhappy people in the world where they get their first $1 million and then they go, well, that's great. But you know what? Maybe I need a second million just in case I lose my first one. And then something else comes along in life that makes them go, shit, you know what? Maybe I need 5.
And then
maybe I should have 5 million. And it just keeps going and going and going, and people will never be satisfied. It's like, you know, it's we are chasing of happiness again in the external world. When we can find it within ourselves, and we can be happy and fulfilled and content with the journey. And I'll share you a beautiful metaphor that, again, I give credit to my mentor Peter Sage on. He talks about the curse of the white rabbit. Okay. Now, the white rabbit is the metaphor for the things that you're chasing: money, success, a studio, material goods, girls, fame, whatever it is that you think is going to fulfill you, make you happy, make you complete, bring you your sense of significance in the world and identity. Right? So we all understand the concept of the greyhounds that race around the track chasing the rabbit. You know, ever seen the greyhounds?
Yeah.
Okay. So in all the times you've ever seen it, how many times has the greyhound ever caught the rabbit? How many times? How many times?
So far, none, I believe.
None, right? None. Do you know why?
Because the rabbit is always faster.
That's one reason, but there's another reason, a bigger reason. I'll tell you now. The reason why those dogs never ever chase a rabbit unless there's a technical glitch, right? Or maybe it's a super dog. But for the most part, It's because that sport is set up that way. They will never, ever get the rabbit. It's set up that way, okay? And life is very much the same, okay? And this is not a conspiracy, but it's, again, it comes down to, you know, we're chasing the wrong thing. It's not about the end result, okay? So these dogs, week in, week out, will keep coming to the same track over and over and over, will run their hearts out, try their best, never get this rabbit, but you never, ever hear a dog say, fuck this, too hard, never going to catch the fucking thing, I'm giving up, I'm over it.
So what's the alternative? What should the greyhound
do? There's no alternative. The reason why the dogs keep coming is because they're born to run. That's what they're here for. They're happy running. They're happy in being in the process of the chase, not about catching anything. So we're all getting busy about, I need gold records, I need this equipment, I need these guitars, I need this, I need this, I need this, rather than think about the process. Making it is, oh, I'm doing something that right now outside, I've got 80% of the population right now at home doing jobs that I want to do and they're miserable. And I'm doing something that I love to do. I may not make much money today. In fact, I may not make any money today. I don't know. But I'm happy because I'm here doing what I love to do. And I love doing my mentoring and, you know, and hey, I'm getting no money for doing this talk today.
No.
But I love the process. I love talking about this stuff. I love to share the story and I love to, and, you know, to put it out there to try and help the kids. It's a passion. I absolutely love doing this.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I don't give a shit about, you know, what's involved or if anything's involved. It doesn't matter. It's about the fact that I have got some excess energy today that I can put out there in a positive way. Right?
So let's talk about the kids a little bit. Let's make a really practical approach. So there's someone who's 18 years old, finished school, you know, dabbled into mixing, mastering, already had a couple of tracks out there, already has maybe one or two friends who, you know, he gets paid $20 for a mix, and he comes to you and says like, well, you know, I think I really want to do this and I have this passion for it. What do you think should be their first step to now take care of others, right? What you said in the beginning of our interview, where it's about taking care and bringing value to others. But how would that practically look like for someone who doesn't have that much value yet to offer? What advice would you give them?
All right. Tony Robbins had a saying of repetition is the mother of skill. Right? So if you're an 18-year-old and you're just starting out, rather than worrying about the what if and what if this happens and what if that happens and that, don't worry about how you're going to get there. Worry about why you're doing it. So when you're clear as to the reason why you're doing it, I'm doing this because, for example, yes, I love music. I want to contribute. I want to make my mark on the world. I want to do something bigger than me. And that's not being an egocentric maniac. That's you wanting to do something more than just your own satisfaction and for your own means. So when you can honestly tell yourself that this is more than just music. There's more to it than that for me. You know, it's a lifestyle. It's a passion. It's a way I leave my mark on the world. And when you are clear and you do it from that place, you will find that life, being the non-linear thing that it is, doors will open for you in ways what people call coincidences. The right person happens to pop up. This opportunity happens to pop up. What you're in control of is simply what you can do, which is doing the work, learning the skills, building the relationships, these kind of things. Everything outside of you is out of your control. Everything's completely out of control. We all think that we have some control over life and we don't. It's a fucking chaos everywhere. Yeah. But we have control over what we can do in our day-to-day. We have control over our thoughts and how we choose to perceive the thoughts and what it means. You know, something that doesn't go your way, you know, understand that it's not always going to go your way. And that's okay. As I said, life isn't meant to be fair. But what do? Do you decide and say, well, this is shit. Life's out to get me. I'm no good at what I'm doing. Fuck it, too hard. It's like the dogs. They don't think that. They just go, well, it doesn't matter because I'm here to run. They have a reason why. They're born to run. They understand why they're there in the first place. That's why they keep showing up. So if you can keep showing up in your studio, keep working on things, building a good peer group, having good people surrounding you that support you, that challenge you, not just there to be your yes man. Yeah, oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. You know, people that aren't afraid to tell you, you know, even if they're wrong, at least they have enough guts to speak up and tell you what you need to hear. Because I've got a saying, and that is that your real friends will say the shit things to your face and the great things behind your back.
I like that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's true. It's true.
They say shit at your face.
They'll say the shit things to your face and the good things behind your back. People sometimes don't like it when they hear things, and it hurts them because we have a fragile sense of ego. But again, it comes down to how do you choose to take that on? Are you going to take it on as someone just giving you a hard time because they just feel they want to do that for shits and giggles, or because someone actually has enough guts and courage to say something that actually is true and that's well-meaning, and you take a little bit of, a bitter pill to swallow. But if it wasn't for the person who cared enough and was brave enough to say something that other people didn't have the gumption to say, to get you off on a different track in life and on a better track.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
So when you're young, remember you've got, cliche as it may sound, you've got all the time in the world ahead of you. You've got plenty of time ahead of you to get through where you want to get to. It's about being clear on why you're doing things. It's about getting good at what you do. The more you do something, the better you'll get at it. And when you get good at something, guess what? Other people will start doing your bidding for you. You won't have to go out and sell yourself as much.
Yeah.
Well, trust me, it's how it operates. And then when people find out, guess what? They come to you. They're more willing. They're more open. You don't have to sell anything.
Yeah.
It just comes down to a matter of, is it exactly what they want? Is it is it of value to them?
Yeah.
Can you fill in can you fix their pain points, as it were? And then the next thing you know, people will be prepared to pay because they're always looking for things that are going to work for them. And then people are looking for options. Yeah. So stick to the stuff that you can control. Keep working at it. Be consistent at it. Keep enjoying the process. Be grateful for the fact that you do it, because most people think about it, love the idea of doing it, but they shoot themselves in the foot and don't even get started. They love the idea of being at the finish line with all the people at the going, yay! And the media and the fucking paparazzi and the champagne. And all that. People love that idea, but most people, though, won't even get out of bed to put the shoes on to get to the fucking track to run the race. And unfortunately, that's the reality. The sad fact is that, and this is not being a pessimist, and this is not being negative, and this is not me trying to discourage anybody, but this is just based on current statistics and facts, okay? That 90% to 95% of people that are going to try and do this at some point are going to give up within 12 months.
Yep.
They're just going to try for a while and then they just give up.
Yep.
And it's 5%. It's why how often do we hear about the 1% of the people that own the world? Why do you think that is?
Because they turn up.
Say, it's money and it's hereditary, but what about all the new money? What about the people that started, Google and all these new companies that are running the fucking world right now? The guys that own Google, they didn't just wake up one day and got inheritance from their daddy. Yeah, they were prepared to do the things that other people weren't prepared to do. They had a vision that other people didn't have.
I think
these are things that are more important, Michel.
Yeah.
And I believe that everyone has a birthright to be happy and to be content when they find it within themselves, and when they get their values right and their priorities right, and they have good peer group around them, and they have direction, and they're open, and they don't take things personally in life. They're going to get a hell of a lot further enjoying the journey than other people who don't.
Yeah, agree. I think really something when I work with clients, I think the most important thing that I would say 80 to 90% of artists and musicians are lacking is clarity in that direction, and lack of a vision of how it actually looks like when they made it. How does the process look like, right? It's I think that's super valuable. And like, I encourage everyone, go to the forest for a week, or take your laptop or your notebook, and and don't come back before you don't know how it actually looks like and how it would feel like achieving all the things that you wanted to achieve, right? Because your life will not change by you having a Grammy. You will not be happier just by earning a piece of metal, right? Or
Yeah, well, let me tell you, mate, I've got gold and platinum records out in my hallway, and it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful achievement, and I'm grateful that they're there. But I'm going to be taking out the garbage at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still going to be cleaning my toilet, and I'm still going to be making coffee for someone else.
That's it.
You know, it's not what defines me. Beautiful as it is to have, but again, these things are the byproduct of the fact that I love what I do, and I'm fortunate enough to do what I do on a daily basis.
Cool.
I say that man makes the award, and music is the reward.
You're just such a book of like amazing quotes. Have you thought about maybe just writing them down one day and just?
Look, I've been trying to write a book for the last 6 years, I think.
I would love to read it.
Eventually something will come of it. Look, I think right now I've got a lot of content down. It's just a matter of getting it off to an editor and letting them, you see, because I would be, it's funny that sometimes we think we know what people are going to like. And yet for the most part, even artistically, we try and make, our musicians are making music what they think people are going to like, and the stuff that they think is rubbish is the gold to other people, and so I think I'm pretty close to having enough content, but I'm not going to try and second guess what I think people will want to see or read. I'm just going to put it in a big skip. I'm going to take it to an editor and let them go through it and see if they feel it's viable, and allow them to make more of the executive decisions as to what direction or what format or what material should be in it, because it's very hard for us to be objective when it comes to our own stuff.
True. Super true. Let's switch gears a little bit before we wrap up for today. I have a couple of quicker questions. Do you make your bed in the morning? And if so, why? Or if not, why not?
I don't make it entirely on my own because it's a king size, and I usually make it, and I usually make it with my wife.
Yeah,
we unmake it together as well. But it's interesting, I was curious as to why you put this question up, because it's not I've never been asked that question. But you've heard of a guy called Jocko Willink? Yeah, the Navy SEAL. Yeah,
of course.
Jocko Willink talks about that in one of his talks about, the importance of making a bed in the morning and coming home at the end of the day, and the importance of setting up, that making your bed was a really good way of setting up your day in a positive fashion. And I understand that. I'll be honest, I don't do it for that reason. I do it because if I don't do it, then my wife will withhold sex from me, and I like sex, so I think it's a small price to pay.
That's I think that's a good motivation for making it.
I'm just being honest and pragmatic.
That's fine. I mean,
having said that, I like it tight. If you come to my studio, you'll find it's very tidy. I like a clean, orderly place, and I think, even at home, I don't like to leave dishes at night in the sink. Nothing worse than coming to your place of work or going at home, and I think it comes down to self-respect. It's not about, how's it going to look in the eyes of other people. It's about, when I get up in the morning and I go home, I want to see my sink clean, and I can start the day on a new note, on a fresh start. And I think making your bed is a similar kind of thing. And after I saw Jocko's talk about that, it made a lot of sense. So the short answer to your question, my friend, is yes, but I do it alongside my wife, Connie. It's done a lot quicker, it's a lot easier, and it just gets done. I don't have to think about it after that.
Great. Awesome. What are the 3 things, Jack, that you use on a daily basis?
What do I use on a daily basis? Well, all my body parts usually get some kind of use every day. There's more than 3 of those.
Maybe like tools or equipment or certain pen.
I think some people might argue, but my brain
Mhm.
every day. I like to try and exercise my brain and use that, whether it's to learn something or
Yeah.
sometimes even doing something good for your brain is letting it shut off. You know, we're always told do things, learn things, be productive. Sometimes it's good just to switch off and just
Mhm.
allow things to reset.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we use our brain and our body every day. You know, movement, physical activity. You know, to be fit. So I guess body, brain, and what else to use on a daily basis. Um, I guess look, I don't know. I mean, it's I just say body and brain really, and all of me. I don't think about, and every day is different for me,
Mhm.
But I do know that my brain and my body get used every day. This is the vehicle that's going to get me through life, and the more I use it, the more I take care of it as best I can. It's going to allow me to have a much better experience in having this human experience.
Yeah. Great. And probably the last question, Jack, is if we travel 10 years in the future, how will we make and listen and consume music? What's your idea about that?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen 2 minutes from now, and I don't have a crystal ball. But I think the streaming model that we have now is going to remain. There's going to be again something that's some storage. It'll remain being digital, and maybe the changes we'll see perhaps will be. I'm hoping for higher resolution, better quality. Again, smaller storage spaces where a terabyte will be on like your pinky fingernail. Other than that, I really don't know. It's exciting, and I think the mind boggles. I don't I can't imagine exactly how it's going to be. It's fascinating because when it comes to digital, it's all happening exponentially faster, quicker, cheaper. Formats change, delivery medium's going to change. I mean, look, it's taken a long time to go from the traditional model of how people would go to the record shop, buy records, cassettes, and whatnot, and have that physical listening experience to file sharing. And we went through a big state of flux for many years, from probably the 90s into the early 2000s, where there was still a lot of stuff that it was quite unsettled, and then people were buying stuff online. And now in recent times, we're just coming on a streaming model, and that's still changing and evolving as
Yeah.
people are working out percentages and royalties and what artists get paid and how they get paid, etc. So yeah, I think it's look, definitely, I would say if I was a betting man, it's going to be digital. I don't know whether we're going to have something that's high resolution, better quality, that requires less storage space, or whether there's going to be other devices, because the way we listen to music now is different.
Mhm.
When I was growing up, listening to music was your primary entertainment. I'd save money, I'd buy the record, I'd sit down, there was a ritual of putting the vinyl on, and you'd sit down with your friends and smoke a joint, and there wasn't that much social interaction because we'd be listening to music, or we'd be talking shit, whatever. But the focus was sitting in between two speakers and enjoying the stereo experience of listening to music. And whereas now, my kids who are in the 20s, I've got two kids in their 20s, and music for them is something they do alongside something else. So
Yeah.
they're walking, they've got something listening to. They're on. I've got a 14-year-old as well as a gamer. He'll be playing a game. He's got music playing in the background. It hasn't become that main focal point and interest,
Mhm.
and source of entertainment. It's becoming an adjunct to other things that other people are doing at the same time.
Yeah.
So, hopefully I'd like to think that music may, maybe come back to, we come back to a time where I think it's highly unlikely. Maybe that's just the romanticist in me, the nostalgia guy in me, who would like that. But, the only thing that doesn't change is that everything changes. And so we need to adapt with that and learn to live with it and make the most and the best of what it is,
Yeah.
irrespective of what we have in front of us.
Yeah. Wow. And maybe we can finish off with a little story that I would like you to finish. Let's assume tomorrow all the world is changing, all your electronic history devices are gone. People don't know anymore what music you made, what music you mastered, what music you involved in. No one has ever heard from you. All data has been erased. And it's also your last day on Earth. And the only piece of wisdom that you can share with the world over your 57 years of life experience, they have to fit on a post-it note. What would you write on that post-it note before you leave this planet?
Remember that you were born perfect and there was nothing ever wrong with you. The greatest lie that was ever perpetrated. So the minute you can learn to, and I know this is probably more than a post-it note, but when people can understand to love themselves and be comfortable in their own skin and not be worried about what other people think about them and the opinions other people have about them, and live their life freely, then they're going to be happy in life. They're going to be way, way freer than most other people that are trapped in the prison of, I'm worried about what you're thinking about me right now. You're born fucking perfect. There was nothing wrong with you. There never was.